That is a very standard, commonly seen rate for a freelance paralegal. In my 4 years of running my own business and my 300 law firms that I've consulted over those 4 years, I've never, maybe one time, had somebody say it was out of budget. So you want to also be factoring in what's that perfect hourly rate that also allows me to, like, say you want to make 6 figures, that also allows me to make 6 figures and take the vacation time that I want to take. But our attorneys can't work with us and not make money. Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Paralegal Freelance Lounge. Jacqueline Foster here. Today I want to talk about setting your rates as a freelance paralegal, factors you need to consider, and how to land on an hourly rate or a flat fee rate for your services. I typically am talking about rates and what's out there and what the market is showing us on almost every podcast episode I do, where I'm talking about the financial side of being a freelance paralegal. But the reason I wanted to bring it up again today is my data has increased on an average price for freelance paralegals currently. So of my 200 freelance paralegal listings that I'm pulling data off of, the average listing price has increased in the last month from $61 per hour up to $71 per hour. Now, it never fails. Anytime I talk about paralegals pricing out their services, what they're charging, and giving some sort of average for paralegals to base and start off of, I always get somebody commenting that I am wrong. But here's the funny thing about it. It's not consistent where they're saying that's way too low or consistent where they're saying that's way too high. It's both. I have posted before saying, a paralegal scenario charging $60 per hour. I've had a paralegal or many paralegals hop on there and say like, wow, that's way too little. I charge $90 per hour. Don't sell yourself short. Like, this is way too low. And then I've also had paralegals jump on there and say, $60 per hour, there's no way unless you're working in like corporate or trademarks, intellectual property, or something that's harder to come about in a specialty for a paralegal. So I can totally understand why this is so very confusing, but I want to come to you with my 300 law firms that I've worked with over the last 4 years in their staffing, understanding what they're seeing in the market as they're navigating different options for their freelance paralegal. What I know paralegals are out there charging and gaining good clientele in charging. I want to give you some real life experience of working with so many firms and being so very close to this industry my entire last, since 2018 of my career. Now, I do still believe that the smack dab average for freelance paralegals is about $60 per hour, where that hourly rate, no matter what practice area you're in, is not going to come off as offensive to the attorney. If you do have a client on a sales call and you say, I charge 50, I charge 60, and they're like, that's way too high, how about 25? Like, trust me, they are not your ideal client because they're not truly understanding your true purpose in coming into a law firm. And I'm not gonna go down a rabbit hole here and talk about why you're actually coming into the law firm, and attorneys that get it. But essentially, you are an immediate return on investment. You come with no other costs. You come with a specialty. You come with hitting the ground running. There's no recruiting costs for bringing you in. There's no payroll. There's no benefits. There's no fluff. It is truly taking what you do and billing it against their clients for a 50% to 75% immediate return on investment. And it actually really shocks me that some paralegals say they hit that pushback from attorneys saying like that's way too much. Because honestly, in my 4 years of running my own business and my 300 law firms that I have consulted over those 4 years, I've never, maybe one time, had somebody say it was out of budget. Now, I did a video, and I'll link it up here somewhere if I know how to do that. But if I don't and you don't see it, go to my channel and find it on the billing strategies paralegals can take, where I separate out between hourly rates and flat fee rates and what that sort of looks like and what's appropriate for what. But I'll just give you the synopsis here. Hourly rates are really, really appropriate if you're doing as delegated type work. I would not engage with an attorney that's going to be throwing a lot of different things at you on their cases, such as discovery or demand drafting, and they're really like incorporating you into the cases and doing a multitude of things, especially client contact. I would not recommend offering flat fee in those arrangements. Just go the hourly rate because as we know, we have no idea what's going to derail the projection of time as it takes to complete an assignment. You could have a rogue client, a client that's not getting back to you, a client that keeps you on the phone for 45 minutes. And I talk about the firm's client. You could have, a curveball in some of your discovery. So as it relates to that hourly rate, and even if you're going that flat fee route, let's start with the hourly rate in general. Now, and setting that hourly rate so you can sort of create a flat fee rate that makes sense based on your hourly rate. If you start offering very specialized services such as demand drafting, estate planning drafting, medical record summarization, like very specific services where it's like one and done. This is all I'm doing on the case. Now, as I said, basically every practice area out there, I don't care if it's a small local criminal defense firm, all the way up to a fancy corporate transactional firm, mergers and acquisitions, you're doing like big high-end stuff for that attorney. Nobody's going to scoff at like a $60 per hour rate. That is a very standard, commonly seen rate for a freelance paralegal. You always want to start by looking at what your ideal client is going to be charging their client for your services. So for instance, a lot of my small firms that I've ever worked for will charge their paralegals out between $125 and $150 per hour. We have to keep in mind, very close to the front of our mind, that our attorneys can't work with us and not make money. We have to be making the firm money to continue to work with them and be a very smart solution for their staffing needs. So you don't want to take that full 125, 150 if that's what you're being billed out at. A profit margin that makes most attorneys feel comfortable in working with a freelance paralegal is going to be over 50%. You don't want to dip too low beneath that, because I actually teach attorneys how to have a 63-ish% profit margin by staffing strategically in firm. We definitely go through how the freelance paralegal is going to make that staffing solution with a 63% profit margin on your in-firm staff a possibility. So if you're, for instance, ideal client, your corporate attorneys or your trademark attorneys, and you're used to working in these firms and seeing yourself getting billed out at $250 an hour, look at what 50 or 60% of that hourly rate is and if that's going to make sense for your ideal client. So you'll hear me keep saying ideal client, or what I call in my freelance paralegal roadmap course, North Star client. Your North Star client and you personally all come together to really ensure that your price point is both lucrative for the attorney as well as lucrative for you to embark on entrepreneurship as a paralegal. And when we don't know who our ideal client is to a very deep professional level, it gets very confusing in how to set our prices. So really just pick, who are you actually targeting? What are their unique complications in scaling their law firm as far as it relates to staffing? Cater to them specifically in an hourly rate that makes them money. The next factor that you can consider when setting your pricing is scarcity of your specialty. So you might be specifically in criminal law, but specialize very, very intimately with death penalty cases or appeals in the criminal space. And finding paralegals that have that specific state experience and that more complex type work, even in that practice area, can be very difficult to find. So as such, because there is that demand for you, but the supply options are very low for attorneys out there, you can command higher rates for that specialty. Same thing goes in your very high-end corporate transactional corporate litigation, certain real estate development litigation, anything that really you don't see a lot of paralegals specializing in specifically that are also offering freelance services, you can command into that $100 per hour rate. But again, looking at who your ideal client is it a solo law firm in a small, tiny little area that is only charging you out at $150? You have to really take those two components together to get to that hourly rate outcome. Don't let that completely deter you from thinking, oh, well, I do family law. There's tons of family law paralegals out there. you're still going to be able to charge a good rate for yourself if you have strong experience in that practice area. For instance, sometimes in family law, if they're working with high value asset clients, they're working with those clients that have millions and millions in assets or several businesses that need to be divided, or we're looking at massive maintenance or what have you. And depending, what type of state you're working in, is it a no fault state? Is it a fault divorce state? What type of specialty are you coming in with? You can start creeping up beyond into that $70-$80 per hour, even in that specialty area. And then of course you're looking at the state. So California is going to not bat an eye at a $90 per hour rate, but a small firm out in the middle of a field in Iowa might not be able to handle that type of hourly rate in comparison to what they could hire and looking at training somebody else in to do that role. So there's so many factors coming in to set your hourly rate. And then finally, there's always that factor of you personally. What do you want to make? What ultimately is your goal for financial security, financial freedom, for not just getting by having a freelance paralegal business, but improving your life on a financial standpoint? Further, having that solid hourly rate that also is going to allow you to take your 3 weeks of vacation, 2 months of vacation, what have you, to make up for, those hours you're not going to be working. If you're not advancing into an agency, a team model, if you're bringing in no additional paralegals to work on the clock for your clients, you have to be on the clock to make money. So you want to also be factoring in what's that perfect hourly rate that also allows me to, like, say you want to make 6 figures, that also allows me to make 6 figures and take the vacation time that I want to take. Because I'm all about, it's not just about financial freedom in starting a paralegal business. It's also about personal freedom and having some of that ability to fluctuate in your schedule, set your own schedule, take those vacation times without putting in PTO requests, like those things that really make it sound like a pipe dream, but is so incredibly available to paralegals out there. And finally, a factor to consider when setting your rate is scalability. So if you do, that's, again, we go back to the Freelance Paralegal Roadmap. I have you set your business model first because it matters where you plan to scale your business. Are you just planning to scale solo so that, I'm going to increase my price over time, start attracting more high-end clients, if you will, that are willing to pay a higher hourly rate? Are you planning on scaling in volume by bringing in more paralegals, whether that's in the team model or the agency model? How are you planning to scale? Because if the latter is true and you want to scale by bringing in volume of hours, you're going to have to look at your own profit margin capabilities. So what I mean by that is if you're bringing in a paralegal to work for you as a subcontractor on your client work, you are going to be paying that paralegal. You'll be invoicing your attorney your hourly rate, but then you'll be giving your paralegal a percentage of that hourly rate. And to stay competitive, you want to be as high as you possibly can. And I shouldn't even say to stay competitive, to bring in the best paralegals out there that are going to really, truly be able to work without your constant oversight. You're going to want to be able to offer a higher hourly rate, even in that subcontractor capacity. Now, yes, those paralegals can go and acquire their own clients and charge their own hourly rate, but that's not the point. The point is that you've already done that legwork. You have the client. They have time they need to fill in their own business, and you've done that. So they're not going to make as much as they would if they could charge that attorney on their own and acquire their own clients. So you want to, again, just like I talked about with the attorney, they need a healthy profit margin, so do you. So look at it in the sense of, okay, if I am charging only $50 per hour, but to get a really good quality paralegal, I have to charge give them $45 an hour or $40 an hour. That does not leave you a ton of room for growth in your scalability. Now, of course, you can grow in volume and continue to replicate your efforts and get to billing out 10,000 hours a month someday, and definitely the $10 per hour you're making per paralegal is going to generate you great revenue and great net profits. But looking at it from a standpoint of getting yourself scaling, getting yourself out of the daily work, if that's what your goal is, you want to still have that profit margin so you can afford to do so. So you can say, I am going to still be making a 50% profit margin, and that 50% profit margin is going to pay my bills, keep my business growing, and make this all worth it for me. Here's a last little tip on setting your prices that you might not have expected from me, but I want to mention it because it's so very important. I had a business consultant one time ask me, what are your plans for revenue in 2022? I think I was heading into 2022. And I told him a very non-general number. You know, I want to hit $500,000, or I want to hit 400,000 or something like that. And he asked me why. And I said, well, because I want to grow. Like, that's a good growth margin from, you know, doing 260 the year before to now wanting to jump up. You know, that's over 100% growth margin increase rate, and that's what my goal is. And he said, that's not going to work. You're an entrepreneur now. As an entrepreneur, this is a cardinal rule. Like, you have to get very close to your why in growing your business to the exact place you want to grow it. If you don't get so close to that, in the sense of you feel like it's there, and if you don't get there, you're going to lose what you're going after. You don't have that motivation enough to drive you through some difficult phases of growth that are inevitable. They're called growing pains. And the more you can get very close to your why on a personal level, the more you're going to be driven to get to that why, the more you're going to start thinking outside the box and how can I generate more revenue? How can I increase my business development? How can I add more to my marketing to increase the views on my website that generate the leads? How can I do this, this, and this? And you'll continue to think from that entrepreneurial spirit when you're looking at your growth plans and where you plan to go. So get very clear. After he asked me that question, we hung up and I sat down, I took a pen and paper out and I listed out everything I planned to do with the money that I would make if I hit that goal, from paying off debt to helping a family member, to just everything that I would plan to do with that money. And that helped me get so much closer to my why and my drive behind my business. And we were able to hit that figure, that exact figure I listed out down to the penny of what I wanted to make and what I wanted to take home in 2022 as a result. Whether I'm almost positive that did contribute to my success, is just to get clear. And that's why in my Paralegal Entrepreneur Growth Planner, I have you go through that, because it's so important to connect to your why in everything you embark on in your paralegal career. I don't care if you're staying an employee and you want to climb a ladder of employment, or you are opening up your own business and taking the path of entrepreneurship. You have to get clear to your why to drive yourself there and almost start to work through that manifestation, that mindset shift that is required to reach your full potential. For those of you that I know will be asking me after this episode, because I mentioned it a couple times, my Freelance Paralegal Roadmap course is opening up again in July. So if you want to be notified of that enrollment opening period, go to the description below, click the link for the Freelance Paralegal Roadmap course, and sign up for those notifications if you're not already on my email list. So then you'll know exactly when the doors open, because I do open the course. It's my signature course, so I only open it for limited enrollment periods throughout the year. All right, that is it for today. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. I greatly appreciate feedback as well. Feel free to reach out to me directly on any of my socials to cover a burning topic that is in your mind that you want me to cover on freelancing as a paralegal, and what to expect and what you need to know, and navigating through that. And until next week, have great days ahead of you.